Hi, everyone. My name is Deirdre McCardle, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the first annual New York Flute Club Career Challenge Winners Recital. Today, we are blessed to hear the flutists Martha Long and Jeff Mitchell in a wonderful program of music just for flute alone. Now, before we get started, I want to quickly tell you a little bit about the Career Challenge Recital and the genesis of this competition. It is for flutists 28 and over, professional level players with no age limit. It was designed during the dark days of the pandemic when folks had lost their jobs and were alone in their apartments basically, and had some of them shared with me that they had lost the desire to play, practice, or whatever, and it was kind of difficult. So I came up with the idea of getting together um, a competition that would be not so much for people to compete with each other, but for people to compete with themselves, to try to be the best they could be, to set the bar a little bit higher for their individual practice, and to have a goal towards which to strive. So, this is the end result of it, and I hope that you enjoy the concert. And I look forward to welcoming you in person in 2022 for the second annual New York Flute Club Career Challenge Winners Recital. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valerie Coleman, and I'm so honored and thrilled that the winner of the New York Flute Club competition would program my piece on the recital. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the Painted Lady. It represents one of my earlier works, and to me, it is all about the strength of a woman and the strength of how it compares to a butterfly with the delicate wings that's able to go across oceans. And so there's a poem actually that is attached with this piece, and it is by poet Margaret Danner, and I'll read a little bit of that. The Painted Lady is a small African butterfly, gaily toned, deep tan or peach, that seems as tremulous and delicately sheer as the objects I treasure. Yet, this cosmopolitan can cross the sea at the icy time of the year in the trail of the big boats to France. Mischance is as wide and somber gray as the lake here in Chicago. Is there strength enough in my peach paper rose or lavender sea laced fan? I hope you enjoy the piece. Thank you. Bye.
I'd like to start the ball rolling here. But first of all, I'd like to thank everybody who attended this just incredible recital, beautiful, beautiful playing, and just very touching music. And I'm very moved by it. And I want to thank Martha and Jeff also. But in terms of thank yous, I'd like to thank the board of the New York Flute Club for supporting the idea of a career challenge. A little bit different than the regular competition with people starting at the age of 28 and no age limit, and kind of an unusual thing. And I'm very grateful that the New York Flute Club has supported this crazy idea of mine. And so now I want to apologize also for any oddities in my internet. I'm in Maine and have satellite internet, so I may be a little bit fuzzy or whatever, but someone will jump in. Jen, who is hosting, will jump in if anything happens with the internet. So I kind of wanted to start things out with a couple of questions to you guys. After listening to yourselves play and going through a concert like this, it's sort of an unusual experience to actually watch yourself play and participate in the audience of a concert that you are actually playing. So, only in this weird virtual world that we live in today could you experience this. So, would you sort of let us know how that made you feel? I'm going to start with you, Martha, and see if you have any kind of things to say about this.
Of course. Well, first of all, it was such a treat to hear Jeff play, and to hear the Catherine Hoover piece, which I had never heard before actually, but it was all just wonderful, beautiful playing. Um, as far as watching my own videos is concerned, I love playing the flute, and yet somehow I really, one of my least favorite things is to listen to myself play. I think that as musicians, we tend to be hypercritical and incredibly self-critical, and when you know when you listen back to yourself, it's really hard to just set those things aside and enjoy what you're hearing. I always say that I would rather play 200 live performances than make one recording, because in the live performance, if something happens in the moment, you have to let it go. And whereas, a recording exists forever, and that can be tricky. But one of my teachers had something that she liked me to do when I listened back to recordings, which she felt made it easier to handle, any thing that you're hearing in your internal monologue. And she said to focus on one aspect of your performance at a time. So instead of thinking, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like all these things, you listen one time and you listen specifically for right notes and right rhythm. And then you listen a second time and you listen for dynamics or vibrato, and a third time for, you know, a third aspect, just so that you can be a little bit more objective about it. And I found that that has helped me a lot. Um, Although I don't think it will ever be truly easy to listen to recordings of myself.
Jeff, what do you think?
I agree with Martha absolutely, and it was that um, the way you played that Coleman piece. I don't know the Cheni piece. I'd heard it, but I've never studied it. The Valerie Coleman. I hear it in a completely different way now than the way I was approaching it. So I think that's brilliant. Um, as far as listening to myself, it's painful to do, and I made this recording. I've got a lot of different projects going on and different things going on, and so actually a couple of weekends ago is when I had some time to actually make the recording, and I was like, well, let me do it. Let me do this in advance in case I, need to do it again or I don't like it or whatever. And I said to my wife, I said, God, it's easier to play live than it is to make the recording. And I think because you, along the lines of what Martha said, you're in the moment. So if you make a mistake and, like, sure, there, I heard a couple of blips, in the Bozza, and wasn't so happy with the, last few lines of it. In this particular recording, but when you're in the moment, like you're in the moment. But then when it's a recording, it's like, you could have edited that, So
Well, I will add that I feel the same way, and I feel personally that I get energy from playing for people.
you
And
know,
playing for a screen is just horrible. It's really, really hard. But hopefully, I like the idea, Martha, of listening to one thing, like focusing. It's a great piece of advice. Um, okay, so what were you happy about, guys, about what you did? Martha, what were you happy about?
Deirdre, this is such a hard question.
Yeah.
I mean, I one of the reasons that I wanted to do this competition was because, like you said, all of a sudden in March 2020, I went from having 3 or 4 concerts a week to having nothing on my calendar for a very long time. And and I'm a very goal-oriented person. I play in an orchestra for a living, and I love having something different on my stand every week that keeps me going. And when I have nothing to do, I tend to get a little lost. Um, and so watching this video for me is I am proud of myself for finding a goal and sticking to it and doing it because I waffled. I went back and forth about whether or not I should do this competition. And, I finally booked a space and booked a recording engineer and went for it. So, and I was proud of the effort that I put in. So I hear that, I see that. There are, still, if I listen to the specifics of my playing, there are still things that I wish I had done that differently, or, got to go back and work on vibrato some more, or, there are X, Y, and Z things that I would still like to work on. But I think overall I'm happy with, um, sort of the general product that I was able to create during this time, and that I was able to do anything during this time, because I tend to get really lost, like I said, when I don't have 20 things to plan ahead for.
Well, Martha, thank you so much for saying that because that makes me feel really, really good because that was the whole point of this, and that makes me so happy. So thank you very much
Well, I'm
for
so
that.
thankful that
And
you
that's
came up with this and that the board went with your
they
idea. It was a
approved
great
it and said,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Jeff, how about you?
um, well, I am very different from Martha in that I don't make my living, primarily as a flutist, which was a conscious decision I made many years ago. And when I started playing again and really going full force at it, I started building up a lot of momentum pretty quickly, playing some recitals, doing this, doing that. And then um, family wise, there was a setback. And so I had to cancel a bunch of things for several months and just kind of pull back. And then 2020 was starting, and like, yes, 2020 was going to be great. 2019 was not the best year in my family. And 2020 starting, and I was turning 40, in 2020. So I was just like, I'm going to jump in and looking forward to playing again and finding more opportunities and booking recitals and doing this and doing that. And COVID and everything else just kind of shut down. And I had really, um, just in my own personal, so I approach music and flute playing, um, in a very, it's very personal. I mean, it's personal to everybody, of course, but I feel like music is almost a form of faith. It's just something that you have to do. And I left it for so long, and I came back to it and have been so involved in it. And then to just have it pulled away, even though I'm not, a professional in the sense that I am primarily earning my living playing, it was still devastating. And I had the same, like, well, why am I playing? Why am I working on this repertoire? I mean, I had just been learning so much new repertoire for the few recitals that I had booked and had planned, and then it was gone. And so when you mentioned you were putting this together, I was like, well, maybe I'll enter. Gave me a reason to learn the Coleman, which I had tried to learn another piece of hers, at one point with piano, and but that was something that I had wanted to plan on a recital, and then that didn't happen. So anyway, it was just um, a good opportunity to have something to work for and to work on every day.
Good. Well, that's great. That's what I was hoping it would be, and And also for me, because I did a lot of work on it too, even though I didn't practice. All right. What do you think about using this type of technology as a learning aid for yourself if you have a big concert coming up, or for students if you're teaching? What do you think about it? I know that like in show jumping with horses, the trainers frequently have their, the riders that are doing like puissance, really high jumps, they'll do like a video preliminary, so that the riders can get a sense of what it's going to feel like to ride the course, and they can look at how they do. What do you think about this? Is it a useful tool? Martha?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in my world, in the orchestral world, usually I'm playing from behind a screen if I'm taking an audition, unless I make it to the final round and they want to see me. Um, so just simple audio recordings are usually good enough for me, but it is really telling to watch myself play because I've been working on some body mapping during this time, and it's so easy to see everything. It's really helpful. And of course, there's, the fact that I can say, as a teacher, I can say something to a student 10 times, or my teachers could have said something to me 10 times. But when you hear it, it clicks all of a sudden. Um, when you actually sit down and listen to yourself and you go, oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh, that's what an appoggiatura is. That's what vibrato, whatever it is that you're talking about, hearing it or seeing it, seeing yourself do something is really telling and really eye-opening.
Thank you. Jeff?
I agree. I second. No.
Second,
No,
absolutely,
it
right?
really, yeah, it's I'll work on something for a while and then either record, video, or I have a Zoom record, whatever that thing is called, the Zoom recorder, not Zoom like we're on right now,
I know.
and record myself on that. And it's very telling. I've always recorded myself. When I was a student, that was something that my teachers very much encouraged. So of course, back before it was, when mini disc players came out. So that was the big thing. I had a mini disc player in college and would record myself on that because it was just always the best way. Teachers always encourage you to become your own best teacher, right? And so being able to judge yourself and really make, say, oh yeah, that could be better, or I would do this differently, or that was good, I'm going to do that again.
Yeah. No, thank you. Um, what about feedback? Like, how do you deal with positive or negative feedback? Sometimes I find positive feedback is harder for me to deal with than negative. But how would you deal with something like that, Martha?
Well, the best way to deal with positive feedback is just to smile and say thank you, whether or not you agree. I mean, and that's really hard to do. We
Yes.
all, somebody will come up to, people will come up to me after concerts or after a recital or whatever and say, oh, I loved X, Y, or Z. And I'll be thinking like, oh,
Oh my
I'm
God.
so tired, or, oh gosh, I didn't take that breath where I thought I was going to, or I was a little bit sharper than the oboe, or what. But if you just smile and say thank you, then they'll never know that you were sharper than the
They'll never know.
oboe or whatever, whatever it was. And that's something that I really try to teach my students to do. We do, if we do a little Zoom masterclass like this, I'll say you each have to give each other a compliment. And when somebody gives you a compliment, you smile and say thank you. And then later, in your lesson, we can discuss if that felt like it was true to you or if you want to work on that. But then as far as negative feedback, I mean, we all receive negative feedback at some point in our life, and as as an orchestral player, I get plenty of different ideas from either my music director or guest conductors. And I mean, I feel like uh, for me, especially in my job in the orchestra, my goal is always to not only be the best player that I can be, but contribute in a way that fits the whole. So if the music director is looking for something else, then I want to be able to deliver that, even if it's not necessarily how I would choose to interpret something. And then of course we always, every now and then we get some negative feedback that's just kind of off the wall, and you just have to say thank you for sharing that with me, and then move on. um, or I'm not sure what the best way, I don't know, Jeff, maybe you have a better way of dealing with very
Yeah.
strange feedback that you might receive.
Hmm.
Yeah, what do you think,
Well,
Jeff?
I well, I mean, positive feedback. Sometimes it's really hard. It's very difficult to take a compliment. I mean, one of the things that I am that's the most difficult about my own playing is, or to, that I work on constantly is my sound, my tone. And I have very negative feelings about my sound. And, like I'm constantly trying to make it better. I have an idea in my mind of what it needs to sound like. And so when somebody says, "Oh, that sounds great," it's like, I mean, that's a personal thing for me. That's one particular aspect of my playing that is just like, oh no, I actually don't like my sound, um so I mean if I'm being very honest, that's really true. As far as negative feedback, when I was younger, negative feedback really, really, really affected me, of course, because you want to be, you want to have approval, whether it's from taking an audition, entering a competition, from your teacher, from whatever. You want that approval. That's why we all go through these programs, right? These school programs, and take all these millions of auditions. And as I represented opera singers for a very long time. Well, it felt like a very long time, mostly because they were opera singers. But for about 8 years, I represented opera singers. And one of the things that I noticed after a couple of years was that every single soprano wore the same skirt and the same heels, and did their makeup the same way, and coiffed their hair the same way, and walked into the audition room and sang, Mimi the same way, or whatever aria. And tenors were doing the same thing. They wear the same suit and sing the same arias. And it just struck me one day, why do you want to be a carbon copy of every other person that you're competing against? Aren't you trying to become an individual artist? And that's, you know, been my personal goal, my personal, like my personal challenge since I came back to playing, is just to, I'm not doing it for anybody else. I really can do it on my terms, and I'm free that way. I'm free because I don't earn my living by having a music director or the principal oboe or the concert master saying, and that's it's a great thing, and that's actually what I guess want to do with playing, right? Is I think that there's a place for everyone's voice, right? Everyone's ability, and being able to take that negative feedback and say, you know what, I hear that maybe you don't think I played that the way that you would like, but you're also telling me what my voice sounds like. And I think there's a fine balance between saying, yeah, you're right, that was sharp, that wasn't necessarily right. But when you get into artistic expression, you need to be very careful about how you deal with that with people.
I agree. I really do. A very good point. Because the artistic expression is what the person really is. That's who you are. So, okay, peak experience, the happiest thing that ever happened with your flute, Martha. Your happiest moments with the flute.
Wow. That's a hard one. Well, I'm really lucky that I have great colleagues in the in the Oregon Symphony, so I don't normally get a talking to from the
Yeah.
principal oboe or the concertmaster. um, so there are just some times where you can feel in my orchestra in particular, you can tell that everybody's having fun. And actually, there's the violinist who elects to sit in the back of the seconds, and every now and then he'll just whoop, like he'll just cheer because he's having so much fun, usually during rehearsals, but every now and then during a concert, like during a really loud ending to a piece. And I can hear it because it's sort of at the end of my section, and it reminds me that yeah, we're working, but we're also doing something that's really incredible. We're it's one of those times when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, you've got 70 or 80 musicians on stage, but it's more than just that. So that's one of those moments that I mean, just thinking about it right now gives me goosebumps, and I can't wait to get back into our hall and play with our orchestra again.
Great.
But there was one other time that I can think of that strangely was when I was doing a competition. When I was in my 20s, I did the NFA's Young Artist competition, and I was in the final round. And the competition was in Washington, D.C. that year. And my parents had lived in DC when they were first married, and my mom doesn't fly, but they were able to drive up to DC, and they came and they saw me play the final round. And one of my teachers, one of my former teachers, was there supporting me, and a lot of my friends from schools and music festivals were there. Um, and I just had a great time playing and performing. And it was a really kind of a magical moment. And I out of the three finalists, I placed third, but whatever. I had so much fun playing that it was a really special time for me. And I had just bought my flute, I think my current flute, about a year before at the previous convention. So it was sort of like for me, it was a little bit like my solo debut on my new flute. And it was, yeah, it was a great time. And I had fun regardless of the results.
That's a very important point, too. Yeah, regardless of the results, that doesn't really matter. But that's a wonderful memory. Jeff, how about you?
Oh, um, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think about the first recital that I gave after I started playing again, and I didn't die. I was so nervous. Oh my God, I was so nervous. So getting like accomplishing that, having stopped for so many years and then saying, I'm going to do this and doing it and, making it through. That was a big personal achievement. So
Well, that's a
I
huge
know
achievement.
not terribly interesting, but
No, but it is interesting. It kind of ties into what this competition is really all
yeah,
about. Now, it's not a competition with other people. It's a competition with ourselves.
ourselves, yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. So I'd like to kind of open this up to anybody in the audience who might like to ask you guys something. Is there anybody who might like to do that? I'm not sure how I could.
Could
Do I
I
have a
ask
raise hand?
could I ask Jeff a
Yep.
question?
Hmm.
So
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, Jeff, how long did you take off the flute, and how did you approach coming back to it, or what made you decide that you
Oh,
wanted to take it out of the case again?
woo. um, when I finished my master's degree, I just was not interested in playing anymore. Um, I still gigged for a little while, but it just was not, you know, many reasons. Wasn't what I wanted to do. I had lost complete confidence in my playing. And so I put it away and I started working on the business, side of things. I basically, I realized I had 2 degrees that say, good for you, you can play the flute. What are you going to do now? And I basically, I was talking to somebody and he said, oh, my best friend is a head booking agent at Cami. And I literally handed him a phone and said, I'm going to be in the city this weekend and I'd like to meet him. And I think if I had been able to even have the ability to do that with my flute, like here, hook this up, that maybe things would have been a little bit differently. I don't know. But blah, 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 blah. I moved to the city in 2005, a few months after I finished my master's, and was just always working, always. I mean, I never felt like I quit music because I've always worked in music. At one point, I did sell my instruments. I sold all of them, got rid of them. Um, I, then I did after a while get a cheap instrument so that if I wanted to make, but I talk about, completely losing my confidence in my playing. At one point, my wife and I were living on the Upper West Side, and our apartment shared a courtyard with Stefan Hoskelson.
Wow.
And I was still at a point in my life where I couldn't play and like I could not play in front of people. And one day I came home and I just wanted to make some sound. And I put my nasty little, I mean, I shouldn't say nasty because it was a lovely little, it was just anyway, kind of a secondary instrument. And I just played through the second movement of the E Bear, like the just nice lyrical, because I couldn't move my fingers anymore or anything. And all of a sudden he started playing it. I had never introduced myself to him. I'd see him on the street. I never introduced myself to him. I was just, because I was so, blah 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 blah. So then I never put my flute together. I felt like I'd never put my flute together again for the whole time that he was. But funny enough, the day I read in Musical America that Mathieu Dufour was going back to Berlin, I heard Stefan practicing Eroica, and I was like, "There's the next principal in Chicago." You could just hear it. It was so amazing. Anyway, then we had our son. We moved, left Manhattan, moved to Riverdale, and Riverdale is a great place. But I've worked from home for years, even before the pandemic, and it is boring up here. I mean, it's a lovely, lovely community, but when you're at home, I mean, it's very much people commute into Manhattan. So it's very quiet during the day. Not right now during COVID, of course. And I was just kind of like, I need to do something. I need a hobby. I need a hobby, you know? And I thought, well, I have a master's degree. Let's just, in flute, let's buy a new flute. Cause I never, as I said in the newsletter, I never lost my love of music, never lost my love of flute. I just needed to do it differently, you know? So that's why so in beginning of 2018, I bought a new flute and here we go.
Wow.
Thanks for asking. Yeah.
That's a good question, actually. Lots of people stop playing, and it's important to hear the stories of people who stop playing and then can pick it back up and sound like you do, Jeff. It's pretty encouraging. Yeah. I also, I don't know if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask you because I can't tell. But before we stop, I do want to thank the judges because they put a lot of time and thought into comments and into listening. So I want to thank them. And that's Jackie Cordova Arrington, Nora Lee Garcia, and John McMurtry and Carol Vincents. So I'd like to recognize them and let them know that we appreciate their time.
Yeah.
So how do I tell if anybody wants to ask a question? If you do, please raise your hand. And otherwise, I think we will say.
I think there's a Q&A or there's a chat that people can put things in, but I don't see any. But
I don't see any, and I don't see any hands up. So I think we'll just say thank you very, very much to both of you. I loved this, and I love the conversation too. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
Martha, it's so nice to meet you and so nice to hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a
very,
question
very
from
special.
somebody.
Okay.
Oh no, that's from Jen.
That's like.
But it only went to us. I don't know. Whatever.
Put it in the Q&A.
Yeah. But
yeah.
Martha,
So
it was great to hear you. That Cheney piece is amazing.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you. It's really wonderful to meet you and to hear you as well. And thank you for organizing, Deirdre.
Yes, thank you, Deirdre.
Oh,
and thank you to Jen for hosting, who's off camera.
Yes, Jen, you're off camera, but without you, we would be nowhere. So thank you so much. And I guess we will say good evening and thank you to the audience. And thank you, Martha, so much. Thanks, Jeff.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.